So finally got a little bit of a break in the rain here. We've had just even more rain, as I've discussed in other videos this summer. I'm out here today picking some beans. I got a lot of them ripe, ready to go. These beans have been producing very, very well for us. Kind of wanted to talk a little bit about changing mentalities from when I've always planted gardens in raised beds, right? I've never had all this space. Last year planting potatoes and onions over at our other lot, and garlic. That was really like my first time ever having, a significantly large garden. And with that change is definitely like a mentality change that has to happen. So traditionally I would plant things super, super tight in the garden, like all the time. I would have to plant them tight because when you're working in a raised bed, that's kind of what you got to deal with, right? You're constantly dealing with a lack of space. So you pack things in and pack things in and pack things in. And what I'm finding is that I still have that mentality, even though I'm not in a raised bed anymore. And I got to kind of work myself out of that. It's been difficult, and I'm learning it this year in the fact that I've got these beans all planted in here and everything is growing great, but I'm still super packed. So those tomatoes that we planted were too tight together, right? I got disease pressure because of that. And I think even when I'm giving things a little bit of space, I'm not giving them enough space, right? So I've really got to work on that. And I think that's something that definitely is coming from years and years and years of just being restraint for space. And now that I have the space, I need to remember that and work on not planting things so tightly. And these green beans are a perfect example of that, or string beans, right? These are just beans. It's starting to rain, so I don't know how much longer I'll be able to record here. But as you can see, these are really tight. I even talked to a friend of mine at the beginning of the season when these things were coming in, and we talked about how many, the seeds hadn't all come up yet and things looked a little tight. And I was like, I'll probably thin them out. But even then, I have a hard time doing it. I'm sitting here looking at them later as the spring was going on, and I was thinking to myself, well, if I lose some and I really want to, maximize my space. And I think what it comes down to is I don't need to necessarily maximize the space as much anymore. We have, a lot of acreage here. I've got several hundred square feet of garden space in, and we're going to add more. We've got 2 beds here. We're going to add another one this fall over here. So we're going to have 3 of these 20 by 40 beds. This is a lot of space, and plus we still have a little bit of space way behind the house, way back there, where we can grow some onions and stuff. And I think in the long run, we're going to put a greenhouse of some sort back there and put tomatoes in it. Just so that we don't have to deal with this constant rain that you're seeing again. It's just been relentless. And Vermont is typically a wetter environment anyway. But so it's an interesting problem to have, right? And this is a problem, and I say it kind of offhanded because it's not a real problem, right? The fact that I have too much space is far from a problem. My mentality of all these years of gardening in small spaces taking a toll on me when I probably don't need to have that toll taken, right? I'm introducing some disease because, specifically with the tomatoes, because I planted them too close together, because I'm so used to planting things tight. These beans are now pretty difficult to pick because everything is so tightly packed in there. They're still producing well. I mean, as you can see, they're producing amazing, but picking them is a pain in the butt because of the fact that I've packed them in so tight, and I don't need to necessarily pack them in so tight. So these are things that I've got to learn and things that change, right? I'm in my 40s and I'm still learning. I've never had this much space. I mean, look at the size of that pumpkin in there. That thing is great. So yeah, it's just an interesting tidbit that I was thinking about here as I was picking these, is that I really have been working in smaller confined spaces for so long that it's hard for me to think about not having that space and not trying to maximize every inch of the garden when maybe I don't need to maximize it so heavily anymore. I'm not saying that I want to go super sparse with it, and I'm not saying that I want to be wasteful with my space, because I still want to get as much production as possible out of the plants that I grow. But I don't necessarily need to have them packed in as tight as I pack them in a raised bed because of my lack of space. I still think, you know, harvesting as much as possible out of as small of a space as possible is good, right? But when you have the room to stretch out, you can maybe reevaluate some of those requirements so that you don't have as much disease pressure, so that airflow can be better accounted for inside the plants or between the plants, right? We don't have to necessarily pack things together that aren't great companions to each other. And this bed is great because we have beans and squash and corn, right? Like these things are traditionally really good to grow together. Specifically because the beans are nitrogen fixers on the end down there, not a problem, right? We'll just leave those to keep the nitrogen in the soil for next year. But they got a couple of zucchinis in here that are almost ready. But the squash also can grow out underneath the corn, which is what I showed you in the previous video, and what you can see here is still happening. These squash are coming out of the cornfield, right, or out of the corn patch, and you can see that we've got plenty of squash in here. You know, we have acorn squash all throughout the cornfield. I don't know if you can see that one back there, right? There's squash all over this cornfield, and that's great. That's what we're doing. We want the squash to be forming underneath the corn as the corn tassels out. By the way, this corn has gotten very tall recently. I'm 6 feet tall and I'm looking straight up at it. So these are easily 8-9 feet tall. So great that they're coming along. Hopefully we can keep the raccoons away long enough to actually harvest some this year. But yeah, as you can see, the squash is coming out here. Mixing plants and maybe packing things tightly that are okay being put together tight is one thing. But putting things in too tight just because of my habit is probably not the best route. And that's something that I do need to think about and plan for. Whereas traditionally, like I said, I've been for so long working in such small conditions that I'm, like programmed to want to squeeze everything in. And I've got to try and release that programming somehow. It's not going to be easy, I'm sure. We got more squash in there. Oh, sorry. You see that guy in there? Another pumpkin. That pumpkin's starting to turn orange on me. Nice. All right, so got a good amount of the beans picked here. Got through this one row. It's kind of hard to make out, but you can see there actually is 2 rows here. You can see the dirt in the middle. It's a spot where I'm able to get in there, get my foot in, and still get into the plants and pick things. You can see there's a bunch of immature wax beans in here. I probably could have picked some of these, like these 2 could probably be picked. But I tend to leave some of them till they're a little bigger. You want them to be kind of bulging. It looks like I dropped one here. Yeah, there's one. One of those problems that I was talking about is just how tight everything is. It makes it hard to kind of see what you're doing. And a lot of times I will miss stuff. So as you can see, like I missed several right there. It's totally, happens. Here's some green ones. The green ones are definitely harder to find because they are the exact same color as the plant. I will say I like these green beans though. They're nice and straight. So for prepping them to can them is super easy. They're not bent in any way. They're all almost perfectly straight, which is pretty nice. Most green beans have some sort of a bend to them. You can see the wax beans have a little bit of a bend to them, but these green ones are all pretty much perfectly straight. And somehow I missed this entire plant. Not exactly sure how I missed this plant, but I did. It happens. So yeah, I went through, picked all of these guys. They are like heavily producing right now, really heavily producing. Just as an example, my boot is a size 10, and yeah, I mean that's a pretty big bowl of beans, probably another 3 or 4 pounds easily. And we've been getting that at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. Lots and lots of canning going on with the beans. I still have some more that I could pick, but the bowl's full and it's raining. And this is a Saturday where unfortunately I've had to do some work for my day job. So I need to get back inside and check on how some of my jobs are going at work. But right here is a whole bunch more beans that I still need to pick. These dragon's tongue or dragon's breath, whatever they're called, you can see there's a bunch that are in here ready. But I think these plants are almost finished. they're starting to turn yellow and kind of fade out. So what I might do with these is just pull them right out. Just take the plants out. I might just do that with all of these actually, because we've been harvesting these a much longer time than the other ones. But yeah, we might just yank all those out and take them and just shake off the roots, so leave the soil behind, or maybe even just cut them at the ground, leave the roots in place, and then just pick the beans off of the plants, you know, for whatever's remaining, and just call this a crop that's complete. We have gotten a significant amount of beans out of here, well worth of the seeds that we paid for. I find that beans are one of those things where you buy a packet of seeds and you get, you know, a significant increase in the number of you know, food for what you put in the ground. So beans are one of those things that I like to grow for sure. So you know, I just kind of wanted to give a short video today, talk a little bit about, you know, changes and how we have to sometimes adjust, right? How things, you know, can give us one perception and set us in one way, and sometimes we need to reevaluate and change those perceptions and change the way that we look at things. I know for myself in this gardening experiment that I'm constantly doing, learning to do things differently and new, and maybe finding different and better ways to do things is part of the fun, but it's also part of the frustration, right? You have to, in order to learn, especially by your mistakes, you have to make the mistake. And sometimes making that mistake is not always the easiest. And it can be frustrating for sure. Most definitely can be frustrating, especially when you only get one shot a year. Like here in Vermont, we don't have, you know, 2 or 3 growing seasons. We have one. We have like 3 months, really is about 100 days, if that, some years less. And if we screw it up, we got to wait the whole next year to try again. So it's frustrating when something doesn't go the way that you want it to go, like those tomatoes over there. But it's also rewarding when things do go the way that you want them to go. You know, we thought at the beginning of the year that this squash patch was not going to do well because my seeds kind of started out slow and things didn't look right or look great. But, you know, a couple months into the season here, and this thing is amazing. This is more than I could have ever hoped for. So as you're learning, you know, take those experiences, learn from them, apply the things you learn to the next and the next and the next attempt. And, you know, hopefully in the long run, this stuff works out. So one thing that we did learn last year is that raccoons like corn, and I'm really hoping that we can protect the corn this year. I let the dog come out here and bark at the woods anytime he hears anything. So hopefully we're scaring away the raccoons and the deer. I don't want the deer to get too far scared away, because I would like to go hunting this fall. And these woods that we have are full of deer. We have seen them in the field a couple times. So I just don't want them to come and eat all the corn. Or they can come eat the corn stalks once I get some cobs off. But yeah, we haven't gotten to that point yet. Okay, anyway, just wanted to kind of walk you through the garden today as I harvested some stuff, talk about some things that I was thinking about, some things that I've learned, and things more about myself than anything else, right? Like how I need to look at things, how I need to think about things, and how I'm learning. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, want to continue to watch and see how we harvest all this squash and continue to harvest the beans and the corn and the peppers and everything else we got going, please feel free to click like on this video, subscribe to the channel, click the little bell when you subscribe and you'll get notified when we upload videos. We try to upload videos once a week. Sometimes that's not as easy as others, but we try. So we will continue to try to do that. We appreciate you watching. Thanks, and have a good one. Okay, for a little bonus video, we're gonna let the geese out while we walk up the hill from picking all those beans. So the way we do this, is we just take their fence down and they get excited and they just follow. So let's see if they'll do it. Hey geese. Hey geese. You guys ready to go for a walk? Let's do it. Come on, geese. Come on. There we go. And they'll just walk up the hill to our pond, which is on the left side of our house up there. They're pretty good. They like to walk with us. But it's funny, they'll eat anything that they can get their mouths on that's green. And I really don't want them to know about the garden down there. The garden is just right there. So that's their pen, that's the garden. We don't ever walk them down the hill, only up the hill. So it's funny, they don't know that it's there, which works. Come on, geese, let's go. Where you at, Lucy? Keep up. Yeah, there we go. They'll follow, and they'll just find their way up to the pond. We just let them run around. Geese are better free rangers than the chickens are. They tend to not poop on everything like the chickens. And they don't tear up the gardens, the flower beds and stuff. The chickens really love to get in like the flower beds and dig through them to look for stuff. The geese don't really care. They'll take a nibble of the plant in one spot and then call it a day. They really are out here to try and eat the grass. That's what they like the most. But, all right, I figured I'd show you the geese. Once again, thanks for watching. Bye.